people shouldn't think they're one or the other. As long as you've got the right people on your team and you can draw upon their skills, you should be marrying those two things together.
Are you a fitness-loving foodie? Then Defy Snacks is for you. Defy offers real, high-quality chocolate you love, combined with functional ingredients, giving you as much as 26 grams of protein per bag, so you can be both a little bit bad and a little bit good at the same time. As a female-owned brand, Defy dedicates a portion of its profits to other women-owned businesses. Currently sold in the US, you can find us on defy.snacks.com and follow us on social at Defy Snacks.
Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Ollerton. I'm the founder of Automated Creative, the creative effectiveness ad tech platform. And this is a weekly podcast about the future of data-driven marketing. Every week or so, I have the pleasure and the privilege of interviewing one of our industry's leaders about where data-driven marketing is going to go. And I think this is the first time I've interviewed anyone from Hexham, maybe even Northumberland, where I'm from. But I am on a call with Jayne Andrews, who's marketing director at Fentimans Ltd. So Jayne, for anyone who doesn't know who you are and what you do, can you give us a bit of background?
Sure. Hi, Tom. At the moment, as you've said, I'm marketing director of Fentimans, which is a soft drinks company based in the northeast of England. But I've had a bit of a journey to get there. I've been doing marketing for 30 years via London, Sydney, Miami, and now in Hexham. I was agency side for half my career. And then the last 15 years, I've been in marketing director roles with quite a big stint in travel marketing.
So lots of interesting places you've been, done brand side, agency side. But what is your biggest ever mistake, Jayne? What was that big mess up that you felt very red-faced at the time, but in retrospect, glad it happened?
Yeah, it was probably more a decision mistake, and it's probably something that lots of people can share right now. I was marketing director for Carnival Cruise Line in Australia for 6 years, and that role was coming to the end. And I actually got offered a role to move to America to be the brand director for Carnival Cruise Line for the whole of North America. So I was like, whoa, oh my God, opportunities like that don't come up very often. So I moved to America with my husband, who was only my husband for a couple of weeks at that point, dragged him to America whilst I'd take up this big job at Carnival. But this was in December 2019. So off to work for a cruise line, the biggest in the world, in 2019. And I guess it was a fuck up in the sense that I didn't realize what was going to happen in the next 3 months and COVID coming in. So in many ways, I kind of killed my career going to work for a cruise line during COVID. But I also, as well as killing my career, I probably did some of the most amazing work I've ever done in my career at the same time. So I still wrestle with it in my head. Was that move to Carnival a fuck up, or did I actually learn a great deal? So I was only in the role for 3 months when the whole company was shut down and thrown into crisis management mode. But in terms of what I learned, I think one thing that was pretty amazing is I moved in to be the director of brand. So for the first 3 months, I was working on fabulous TV commercials, working with the best agency, one of the best agencies in America. I was working with Anomaly in New York. So it was so big and exciting for me. And then when the world kind of crashed around me, I was like, shit, what now? 1,000 people got made redundant in one day at Carnival. And that was just the office staff. Then all the ships closed down. But thankfully, what was quite interesting is a lot of people in the team had better experience than me. But I think having come from a smaller business and being a generalist, it saved me, and it actually saved my job. And where other people were laid off, they kept me in my role as brand director. And then I was given lots of other areas of responsibility to handle for the whole duration of COVID. So I picked up partnerships, customer communications, additional PR and crisis management, health and safety messaging. So my little more humble background saved my job during COVID. Still to this day, I'm not sure whether it was a complete fuck up, but it did feel certainly like a fuck up to land in a cruise line in COVID.
I don't think it sounds like a mistake at all, really. You didn't know it was going to happen, so that you can't be blamed for making that decision. But it sounds like you, like all of us, the ones that survive are the ones that adapt, and you did just that. You adapted to change. And there's an incredible list of things that you just rattled off, and it's all marketing, right? Sure, you're not selling bums on seats or bums in rooms or whatever they say in travel, but you did it. That's an incredible story.
Yeah, and I've always been one of these people that doesn't do a lot of research before they do anything. I'm quite impulsive. So when the call came up from Miami, I just went, yeah, brilliant, let's go. And I didn't research heavily whether it would be a good place to live, whether, I could speak, a lot of people speak Spanish in Miami. I didn't do any of this research. I just went. So there was part of me when the COVID thing happened, like, God, I probably should have put a bit more of thought into this and just kept in my safe role back in Australia. But yeah, there were so many things that I got out of it in the end. The team I ran in Australia had been only 7 people, and I was used to having a 3 million Aussie dollar budget. And then I came into America, and before COVID, it was hundreds and hundreds of million that my budget was. But as soon as all of our budgets got cut, I was actually somebody that knew how to manage that, because I'd spent my whole career just having a small budget. And an example of one of the things that I did, which was, okay, I've got no budget here. They back in 2019, Carnival Cruise Line, one of the biggest brands in the world, didn't have TikTok. So I just sat in my bedroom and did a packing video and put up the first TikTok video. And I look back now at what that channel has achieved, and my humble little video from back in 2019 in my bedroom, has got 100,000 views. And then some of the content we then produced after that was got several million views. So I guess what started as a like, oh shit situation turned into finding new opportunities for the brand. And then, thinking on my feet as well, what else I could do.
So can we get more practical now? What's your best bit of advice that you give to people when it comes to data-driven marketing and being better at it?
I had a penny drop moment a few years ago. I've always seen myself as being more of a creative marketer. And I used to think that being data-driven and creative, those had to be separate people. You couldn't do both, which is actually wrong. Even if you're a creative marketer, your best and most successful ideas are going to come from data. They're going to come from an insight. And I worked on a very simple campaign, which was the penny drop moment, back when I was working at Carnival in Australia. We couldn't fill the ships during winter, or we could fill them, but we could only sell the tickets for a low price. So my boss said to me, how are we going to get the pricing up in winter when nobody wants to sail on these ships? And the solution came from being data-driven, and it ended up being quite a creative one. I looked at the database, not me personally, because I can't do things like that, but I got the analyst on our team to have a look at the database, and I said, tell me who is traveling in winter. Like, who are the people going on these ships when it's freezing cold? And we realized that the people traveling were couples over 50. And they were just going to have a bit of fun because they could travel any time of the year at the cheapest time because they didn't have kids at home anymore. And then I realized, I was like, oh my God, these people are actually having like a second honeymoon. They're going on the ships during winter for a second honeymoon. And then off the back of that, the agency that I was working with at the time coined the term honey boomers. And we ran a couple of campaigns for 2 or 3 years all around the honey boomers and getting couples to come on board our ships to revitalize their relationships and put fun back into them. And it might sound really simplistic, but that was the moment where I realized that, yeah, I'm a creative marketer, but actually we would not have come to that idea had we not looked at the data. And people shouldn't think they're one or the other. As long as you've got the right people on your team and you can draw upon their skills, you should be marrying those two things together.
That is a wonderful story, and it chimes with the podcast I recorded a few weeks ago in Amsterdam, and the guest was talking about how no one really wants to market to that age group. You know, it's not cool, it's not exciting, and actually specifically women as well. They were often in media over that age, certain age, are seen as sort of comedy characters. You know, then it's all about like how can we get you to look younger and all that stuff, whereas actually it's very patronizing, when in reality they've got loads of money and they can do whatever they want, and they can like and it's kind of odd that there's this fetish with advertising to, you know, 21-year-old good looking people in, you know, skinny jeans and stuff. Anyway, they probably don't even wear skinny jeans. I'm nearly 50, so that's how out of date I am. Apologies to anyone. So we're going to move on now to your shiny new object, which is high performing and happy teams. Now that sounds unbelievably obvious what that is. Sometimes these things take explanation, but why have you chosen that as your shiny new object?
I think, I'm going to be quite frank now. Over the years, and I've worked for 30 years. I've worked for some complete narcissists and a few wankers over the years, and I've also had it said to me several times, we have to create a high-performing team to be successful. And a couple of years ago, I actually rewrote my CV, and I stopped writing, I want to create high-performing teams. And I started writing, I create high-performing and happy teams. And although it sounds bloody obvious, I think it's really important to remember that you don't have to create an environment where, you're cracking the whip and you're making people feel on edge. If you can get people in the environment around you to relax, be themselves, be authentic. I hate that word. That's also wanky, but get people to just feel like they can say what's on their mind. You will actually get a far more high performing team than one where everybody's completely stressed out all the time. So this isn't about me being all cuddly, but I've always tried over the last few years to maintain an environment where people can offer up ideas, offer suggestions, and it makes a much more productive environment. And I think even more so, this has been important over the last 5 years. During COVID, everybody was stressed about their jobs, insecurities about what the future would look like. And since COVID, I've worked in teams where people are still worried about their jobs because the economy hasn't picked up as much as we thought it would. And people are like, oh no, we're not performing enough. So I always remind myself, and I'm try and check in with my team and just make sure, is everyone all right? I want you to work hard, but are you also all right? So that would be, I guess, just one of the mantras I take forward now. Maybe it's because I've been working for many years. I want to create teams that are productive for the right reasons.
This episode of the Shiny New Object podcast is brought to you in partnership with MadFest. Whether it's live in London or streamed online to the global marketing community, you can always expect a distinctive and daring blend of fast-paced content, startup innovation pitches, and unconventional entertainment from MadFest events. You'll find me causing trouble on stage, recording live versions of this podcast, and sharing a beer with the nicest and most influential people in marketing. Check it out at www.madfestlondon.com. Yeah, there's so many things there which chimes with my experience in, co-running automated creative. Look, we have these mantras that we share when people come on board, and one of them is like, we want to work with the real you. I don't know if that's the same as authentic, probably in that area. And it's just like, look, the question that everyone rolls their eyes whenever I ask this in the interview, but I'm always like, well, what is the thing that you know about most outside of work that isn't work? Like, what is your specialist subject? Yeah. And someone said to me once, they're into luxury hotels, and then the other person we're interviewing said, what did they say? They said, oh, like the French Renaissance. And I'm like, well, who'd I rather be in the pub with chatting to? And then I'm sure they're both interested in their own ways, but what makes you you? And I think the thing that adds on to that is that I did loads of research research or listen to some books. That sounds very grand. Into productivity. And then the one thing that, you got apps and mindsets and blah, 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 blah. And said the thing that's going to make you the most productive is you enjoy what you're doing, right? If you have all the apps, you can have all of the techniques, and have all of the mindsets, Pomodoro, all the rest of it. But if you hate what you're doing, you're going to walk so much slower than if you're happy, and that leads to high performing. But yes, you pulled it out yourself. It's where it gets fluffy, which I think it falls down for a lot of people. So I'm curious to know practically how you make happy like a real and tangible thing that you can report back to the business.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you did it officially, you get all these, we're having conundrums about this at work at the moment. And this is sort of all the teams in Fentimans business. What is there value in these things like your great place to work surveys? Do people even answer them truthfully? So I think to measure it is quite hard. But I think you can see through the very basic things like team retention, how long are they sticking around? Even if you can't necessarily, and I work in a really small business at the moment, there's only 50 of us all together. So there's not necessarily the opportunities for people to, stay there for a long period of their career. But what I can see that is if you make a nice environment, people will stay that little bit longer. And some of my team, have said that to me, like, we're struggling a little bit with the opportunities here, but they'd be taking a risk if they went somewhere else and they didn't get on with the people around them. So I do think retention, but also I can see on a day-to-day, and hopefully I'm right. I hope my team are not listening to this and go, Jayne, you're a complete knob end. This is not how it is. But, in team meetings that everybody feels like they can speak up, whether it's the person that only joined the team a couple of weeks ago to the person that's been there for 3 years. So you can get ideas from anywhere. And I always tell my team as well, it's not just about the job that you do now. Relationships have been a key part of my career. Most of the jobs that I've had have been, some kind of relationship I had years ago, and the person pops up again and then a door opens. So I say to my team, even in things like how they work with agencies, just don't be a dickhead. Work with these people, treat them how you want to be treated, and they don't work for you. They're experts in what they do. So just, treat people well and you'll always get the best work.
It reminds me, our client, Lindsay Barrett, who's the global head of data-driven marketing at Mars. Sorry, Lindsay, if you listen to this. She stood on stage at MadFest a couple of years ago, and she said that her mantra to her team is be a delight to work with, which always stuck with me. It's like, yeah, well, brilliant. It's kind of similar to, treat people how you want to be treated, but it's in that, it has that intention. So I'm curious to know, you sound like you're not really much of a planner and you do things impulsively, but is there a sort of a framework or set of skills, or when you're speaking to people who report into you, to pass on the happiness and high performing by doing these things, or are you trying to reinvent it, or do they come to you with ideas? I'm curious to know, if someone who listened to this podcast came and worked for you, how would they experience that?
I think in even just some basic things like having your one-to-ones with team members. My direct reports I have one-to-ones with, but I make sure that they're checking in regularly with the people that report into them. It's that whole thing, you shouldn't be catching up with your team member at their appraisal every 6 months. You should be having that regular cadence of chats, and also use those conversations not just to talk about the to-do list and what they're working on, but to genuinely just check in if they're okay. Learn a little bit, like you said, about their personal life. And, I'm quite a candid person, so I talk quite openly about what's going on in my life, the ups, the downs, the moans, and I kind of hope that creates an environment where if somebody's unhappy, that they're able to chat to me as well. And you've got to get the balance right. But I do think you're a friend to the people on your team as well. They see you every bloody day. So if something's going on in their personal life, you should be aware of it, and you should be able to step in and help them as well. So I think, just regular communication, nothing too fancy, and making yourself approachable.
And so when does this not work? When are the situations where you're like, oh, like I've leaned too much into happiness and not enough into effective? Because some people take liberties, right? And they go, oh, Jayne, she's pretty relaxed, she's cool, I'll do this tomorrow and I won't you burn them in like oil. I'm not saying that's always the right thing to do, but some, and it's definitely not, certainly not in our business anyway, but sometimes opportunities arrive and you have to kind of go and crank it up a gear, light that candle and get on with it. But so is there a time when this really doesn't work?
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie. I think, there's always instances, and I've had several because I've been doing this for so long, where you've got a disciplinary issue, you've got someone that's, taking the piss, or they're really not performing. And I think at that point, you have to really follow processes and take that step back, so your communication is really clear and you're not, if it's a disciplinary type situation, you're not coating it in fluff. They know what's going on. Because I don't think it's fair on somebody if their performance is underperforming for them to not be crystal clear that they're underperforming, because it's not fair to them, it's not fair to you. So there's obviously instances where it isn't all hearts and rainbows and you have to really put people straight. But I also think that if you've created a good environment and people respect you, when there is an emergency situation and, when you do have to work that weekend, or, you need to pull a favor from somebody, and something needs to be done last minute, hopefully there's a bit of credit in the bank because they know that you're not a piss taker and making them do it all the time. I mean, I don't clock watch people and I don't make them work their hours to the letter. But if something needs to be done, I'd say, shit, this really needs to be done. We've all got to pull our weight here and do it. And if you've created an environment where you're respected, I think people are a bit more likely to do that.
So I have this theory, and you can laugh at this as much as you like, but with social media, we get attracted to the shocking things, right? Someone described, I think Roy Sutherland said something like, if we're having a conversation in a cafe and there's like a ruckus outside, what the first thing we'll do is go and stick our heads out the door, right? And say, what's going on? It's human nature to move towards drama. And the critics of social media that would call it like a Scott Galloway or whoever would call it like a rage machine, where it's all like the most extreme view is the thing that rises to the top, right? Which can be used for good or ill. And I wonder whether the mass market mainstream conception of a leader is someone who's a bit of a meanie for the same reasons. I'm just watching Succession at the minute. I don't think it's that good. I think everyone's too excited about it. Anyway, whatever. But whatever the guy's called, can't even remember. Logan. He's like awful. And then you've got like Alan Sugar, and you've got Gordon Ramsay, and you've got all these people. I don't watch Dragons then, but they don't seem particularly nice all of the time. And there's this idea of a leader, the most shocking, the most rage-inducing person is that quite often sort of toxic masculine shouter. And that is when you think what would a mainstream person think of a CEO? You wouldn't think like, oh, this person who wants people to be happy and high performing, who lives in Hexham perhaps and works for a soft drink company. Do you know what I mean? So that's just an observation, really, that we in business, most of the bosses are meanies, And do you think that the question is, are managers in marketing starting to emulate that behavior, perhaps?
I've definitely had bosses who've, banged their fist on the table. I've worked with one that used to shake people's chairs, to shake them into action. And I'd be like, oh my God. But maybe it's when you get exposed to that, you realize that that's just really ineffective. It just makes you clock watch. It makes you, stressed. So I think having been through situations where I've worked with those fist banging people, I'm like, screw that. That does not work. I do think, I can use it because you used it, but that kind of toxic masculinity phrase, without sounding like some raving feminist here, I do think there is particularly maybe with female bosses, you feel like do I need to shout a bit louder? Do I need to be really assertive to, to get my point across? But I think as you get a little bit more mature into your career, you start to realize that you do need that diversity. So just don't pretend you're something that you're not. And I think, I probably should bring it back to the work, because I think at the end of the day, the work is the most, is a really important thing. And I'm always trying to say to my team, like, we want to make this work. It's really important to be proud about what you create. And you want to make this work the best it can bloody be. And I think, as well as being, cuddly and happy, just getting people to have that pride in what they do. So they're like, fucking hell, this is really good what we've just done. And I was on a panel actually a few weeks ago about working, and it was all about regional marketing, and it came up about working in the north of England. And somebody asked me about the agency that I worked with. Did I work with them because they happened to be up north in England? And I said, no, I work with them because they're bloody good at what they do. I think I've worked all around the world, London, Sydney, Miami, and now Hexham. And one thing that's important to me and important to get out of my team is wherever you are, you can do globally good work. I don't care that, that now I work in Hexham. That shouldn't make any difference. I still want my team to produce work that I would have been proud of wherever. And it's about, I think maybe that's the other thing. Maybe I should add to my high performing and happy, but also people that are proud of what they do.
Yeah, I was just thinking that there's almost like this triangle. Yeah, if you take out pride, or like it's all about making the work as great as possible. And it needs to be happy, high performing, proudful. I don't know what that word is.
I need to rethink this as a little. Yeah, having pride in what you do. Just, I think everybody wants to come out of the end of their career and go, God, I did some good shit. That's what
Do you know what? It's not something you hear a lot. I'll tell you that. Like, I think there's a lot of people just trying to get it done. It's getting a couple of years back now, but the WFA did the World Federation of Advertisers did a survey and said, what as an industry we were really good at, and the thing that they excelled at was like just getting stuff out the door. That's what all the CMOs agreed. Like they could get something out of the door. Not was it great? Was it optimal? Was it all the rest of it? But it was just we can deliver. And I think what you've reminded me something that was much more prevalent when at the start of my career, when it's all about like how great can this work be? How can we make this a bit of art that really sings? Anyway, I'm getting teary-eyed about my
the good old days.
The good old days. Maybe I'm misremembering that. Jayne, thank you so much for your time.
No problem. That was fun. Thank you.
Hi. Just before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to write a review of the Shiny New Object podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever it's called these days, or whichever podcast provider you use. We're an indie podcast, so it would go a long way for us if you could just share the word and give us a bit of a support on those channels. That would just be fantastic. If you haven't got time, that's also cool. And if you could tell your colleagues about the podcast, and also, if possible, don't forget to subscribe. And I'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to speak on the podcast or be a guest, or you think I'm asking the wrong questions, anything, I'd be super interested to hear what you think. So please email me at tom@automatedcreative.net. That's TOM at, I'm not going to bother spelling it. Anyway, you'll work it out. Thanks so much.